12, the OEMs, suppliers, tech companies, startups, because right now in our industry today, it's all intersecting between auto and mobility and tech and now energy. In fact, we were with Nel Hydrogen this week, which is opening up a large manufacturing of clean green hydrogen in Northville, Plymouth, very soon. And so it's all intersecting now. And with that comes all the talent intersection and the needs for talent. But we're not going to talk about the fact that we need talent. We all know that. And we're not going to talk about the fact that we need to find new ways to attract and develop talent. We're really going to focus on the reskilling of people and transforming and personal pivots and things like that. So we'll take a little bit different tact here. So we're going to make it interactive. We're going to try and leave some time for questions too. But what I'd like to do is have each one of them, I'm going to do this a little differently, introduce themselves and the company and what you do today. Hush.
Can everybody hear me? Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, ASEI, for hosting us and hosting me. It's my first time coming to this August Association, and this is a lot of fun. I don't know what I was doing not knowing about you guys. Thanks to Ashwini and Ravi for introducing me to this panel. I go by Hush. My full name is Hushedar Mehta. I'm a long-time resident of Detroit metro area. I live in Rochester. And currently, I'm the chief executive for CGI in Michigan. CGI is a large technology company headquartered out of Canada, and I get to run the entire Michigan operation. That's a quick, brief intro about me.
Thank you, ASEI, and thank you again, likewise, to Ravi and Ashwini. My name is Rophin Paul. Many of you are familiar with the word Wipro from the large company perspective. We basically are originally from the other part of Wipro, that which says Wipro Pari. So this company basically started in 1990 with two people who started a automation and robotics company. And fast forward 30 years from now, we're one of the leaders in battery pack assembly. We build almost all the assembly lines for the major OEMs right now. I head the North American operation for both USA, Mexico, and Canada. It's been a pleasure to be part of this audience. Hopefully I make some answers that make sense. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you, Rophin. I'm Ravi Ramamurthy. For starters, thank you very much for joining our discussion today. I think it's a very relevant and pertinent topic. And thank you, ASEI and Glenn, for moderating the session. I'm currently the Assistant Chief Engineer for Electric Drive Units and Power Electronics for the next generation of electric vehicles at GM. In terms of one of my main mission is to make the electric vehicles affordable. We have a lot of electric vehicles in market today, but in order for all of us to succeed, we need to be profitable. So my main mission is to come up with technologies in the propulsion space to make it profitable and be accessible to customers. So that's what I do.
Hush, what was your first job when you started in the real world out of school?
Yeah, so I think if you guys are up for laughs on Saturday, this is the time, right? So I went to school to do chemical engineering, and my first job after, I did work as an intern in a chemical plant. Hated the fact that it smelled really bad when I came out of the plant and had a 1 hour commute to home. Hated that internship of smelling so bad. So I kind of said, okay, I'm never going to do chemical engineering again. And I funded my father funded me a startup. And after about a year, he realized that he had lost a lot of money. So he kind of prompted me to say that, why don't you do an MBA? Just unfortunately, he had to fund that too. And, I ended up doing my MBA, and I joined an automotive company. And, 25 years later, I'm still associated with automotive, which is why I live in Detroit. But chemical engineering to MBA to joining an automotive company was how my career started.
Okay, I'm coming back to you in a second, but Rophin, what was your first job?
My opening was not as exciting. But I was lucky. Out of school, I got hired into this company called Fanuc Robotics. I was in India at that time in the 90s, and I went out there and I was pretty fascinated with the automation robotics technology. India was just opening up to this and this new technology coming in. Uh, it was the first stepping stone for me because that's where this company, Pari, the owners actually at that time came from the US. They did their PhDs and they're one of those reverse brain drain kind of people who wanted to start a company in India in automation robotics. And they met me as an application software engineer and they were talking about some solutions. And eventually, 8, 10 years fast forward, they grew to the extent where they said, oh, we're going to do something in the US and we want you to head it. And that's how I came here with the flag. And that's my journey.
First job.
All right. My first job was after my master's here in US. I took a advanced technology engineer position with Daimler Trucks at that time. It was to develop new exhaust technologies for a diesel Class 8 truck. And at that time, the diesel side was growing and had a lot of stringent emission requirements. And the challenge was to make it viable for the customer and also for the market. So that was my first job.
Okay, so now what I'd like you to each talk about, we'll start with you, Hush, is I know that you went through more than one transformation in your career, and I know that you did more than one piece of reskilling, but talk about one aspect or one point in your career where you made a change and maybe somebody gave you some resources to help you do that, or something was a tipping point to make, just one point in your career that you reskilled or transformed.
Yeah, that's a really good question, very pertinent to this topic. It is a very personal story, but I won't go back too long in my career. Just pre-pandemic, I made a very big change in my career. I was known as an automotive guy, a product engineering kind of person for all these years that I talked about. When I first went out of MBA school, I got my job in automotive and continued that. But just a little while before the pandemic happened, I moved over to IT. That was a self-made decision. I left all of that career and I said I want to be in digital transformation. That just excited me. Just kind of the unknown really excited me, and I kind of ventured into it, on my own, saying. I'll learn, I'll skill myself to really be of value to my employer, and use some of the transferable skills, and hopefully we can come back to that topic a little bit later in the afternoon, transferable skills. And I use some of those transferable skills from the earlier job to get into what I like to call as the dark side of corporate America, which is transformation-led technology consulting. And 5 years later, I'm not regretting it one bit. I'm very happy that a lot of people encouraged me to make that move. In family first, of course, family really encouraged me. I was very scared. I had kids just about to get into college, and making such a big career change was very scary but very exciting. And I've always preferred to be the eternal optimist, to say, no, tomorrow is going to be better than today, so make the move. That was a little story.
Same question.
For me, I had multiple pivots, going from engineering to business management to customer support and region expansion, all that kind of stuff. But one thing I really would like to mention here is in 2015, we actually built automation systems which built engine lines, transmission assemblies, and things that were typically part of the ICE, the internal combustion engine manufacturing. In 2015, we started seeing the EV advent coming in, a little from Germany and the United States that started to pick up. We quickly realized that this kind of manufacturing is coming up. One of the things and I personally learned there was the manufacturing for these EV cars are very, very different. Not the vehicle by itself, but its powertrain, than what presently is there. And what really drove the technology there was a lot of digital manufacturing. Now, understanding what digital manufacturing is, where people actually would like to create designs digitally, validate them digitally, make equipment digitally, put them in factories digitally, run them digitally, and then go to market fast. That's something that needed a lot of learning. And that pivot for me was very unique. And fortunately, I picked onto it. My team could pick onto it. My management supported that. And today, it's been very, 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 very helpful for us.
Great question, Glenn. For me, I think it's been multiple pivots, and I've traveled with the industry. When I came in, I was in the diesel side of the business. I was in the Class 8 trucks. I moved to automotive. From diesel, I said, let me now try gas. And one thing I always tell myself is when I get comfortable, it's time to move. I think learning to be uncomfortable and challenging yourself is a key aspect. And I think in the morning sessions, multiple people reiterated that. And that's, I think, one of the key moments that I think that helped me to pivot. And now I'm in the electrification and autonomous side of the technologies. So I think learning to pivot at every moment as the industry demands and challenging yourself has been my core mantra for moving through my career.
Yeah, I was just sitting here. I remember a story when I was a senior in college at Michigan State. My roommate Bill and I were sitting. We may have been having Coors Lights at the time, and Bill was reading Time magazine, literally reading it. We didn't have the cell phone craze, and he said, "This article says we're going to work for more than 5 different companies in our career," and I'm like, "No way." Right? Because that's how we thought, right? And that's how our dads were and our moms were. And I think I'm on 6 right now, which is not a lot, really, if you think about careers, but that's going to change dramatically. So I think we get a sense for who these gentlemen are and where they came from, what makes them tick. So we did a pre-call, and one of the things we were talking about, before we started talking about how people and employees change, and it's really, there has to be a philosophy for the company to want to do it. So I work very closely with Denso. Their campus is right over here. I know many of you know them. And they have that philosophy. They know that they have really good people. Let's just talk about engineers for a second. That the products are changing, so they have to either have them learn new skills or have them want to learn new skills, but they have to learn new skills. They're going to bring new people in with different skills, and they're going to have people retire. But there's a whole body of engineers in that base that have the capability to reskill. But we talked about it, and Hush will start again. Let's move down this way. There has to be a corporate will to want to do that.
And Glenn and audience, the corporate will to do that was an option, if it ever was an option 10 years, 5 years, even 4 years ago. I think the greatest of companies differentiated themselves in how they took care of employees and made it a corporate philosophy to reskill. But if it was an option for your company 4 years or 3 years ago, I don't think it's an option anymore. If you are not going to be in the business of reskilling and taking care of your employees, you're going to be left way behind, or you may not even exist. So it's reskilling is going to become existential for a couple of reasons. If you're in this city, you've all heard of the mobility transformation happening. That itself is pretty enormous and ginormous in terms of the reskilling happening. But if you're in any industry right now, the words XAI, X can be replaced by Gen, by C, by conversational, that should start motivating you if you're a leader in the company, or if you're a employee, if you're just a person, you have to start thinking about reskilling. So agree with you wholeheartedly there that if it is not a philosophy already, please, us as employers, make it one, because the kind of change coming is going to be very hard for employees to handle otherwise.
I pretty much agree with what Hush is saying here. Is if it's already not part of the philosophy, it's going to be a survival condition for most companies, right? Specifically, whether you operate in the mobility platform, arena, or pretty much, any technology for that sense. As in today's world, operating in a status quo and continuing to do business the way it was done 5 years back, 10 years back, is pretty much going to perish. Right now, as management, what we do was actually looking at disruptors all the time. We're even continuing to look for disruptors, 1 year, 3 years, something. Reading research papers, looking at what people are doing, looking at how people are trying to solve problems differently. Because today, what is considered as a problem definitely is being solved somewhere, and someone's trying to make a way to change the way we think. So as management, you got to be looking at that. And of course, as a byproduct of that, if you want to support that, you need to have at least few components of your company looking at reskilling and leading the way so that it actually becomes a virtuous circle versus a vicious one.
Yeah, no, great points here. We are in once in a lifetime mobility transformation currently. So I think corporations are really jumping on board. There are two options. You either get on board and disrupt and succeed, or you fall out. I think the survival is key, and there are clearly pathways that corporations are looking at, including my own, looking at how can we reskill and what do we do about it. And I think, like Lego blocks, there are incremental steps that that can be done for employees to understand the skill sets and the challenges that they are looking for. I think the corporation first step, it's not a one size fit all approach. Not everybody needs to jump in and learn software. Not everybody needs to learn AI. It's important to understand the employee's perspective and providing those resources to the employees appropriately, whether it's a incremental Lego block, micro credentials that they got to learn, or a bigger leap, and working with them to get those skill sets will be beneficial both for the employees and also for the corporation. And I think everybody is doing that, and that's a very big key for the mobility economy to succeed, Michigan economy to succeed. And Michigan itself, we all know we are the number 3 in the nation with the number of engineers we come out with. And there's still a lot of dearth for engineers and skill sets that the corporations are looking for. So I think it's really important to acknowledge what the employees are looking for and what the corporations are looking for and come to a sync point there. And I think that's happening.
So let's talk about the employee, and I'm not an engineer. I play one on TV, but I'm not an engineer. But I learned from these guys and those of you who are. And one thing I do know is that we are looking at a software digitally enabled platform on wheels that, oh, by the way, when you electrify it, has even more semiconductors in it. So when you look at the talent that we have in our companies or in other companies, and Hush, we'll start with you again, what about the person? Like, what are the intangibles that we look for in our people or that we can instill in our people? Because, I'll give you the Denso analogy. I've dealt with them since right out of college, and I used to work with their plant right when they first built it in Battle Creek. And their condenser units are very different today than they were when I started out of college, and they're just going to continue to evolve. But if I've been working on that condenser unit for 10 years and it hasn't changed, and now you're telling me you want to software enable me, how do we do that with people, and what are we looking for to be able to do that? And everybody won't do it.
Yeah, that is, there is a generational change in employees. We have to recognize that. Again, in our typical workforce today, you will easily be able to see 4 types of kind of generations working. This morning session talked about 25 years of Google, so you'll talk about a generation that started their careers when Google was not a thing. Then you'll have people that had Google as a thing. Then you get the progression. So I agree with you, Glenn, that there are going to be, basically where I'm going with this is, as a leader in a corporation, one has to look for horses for courses. You've got to know your audience, you've got to know your population and say, these are the 4 types of generations in my company. They learn differently. Some of them haven't had change for a very long time. And my son and daughter's generation are used to technology changing with iPhones changing every 2 years, with something else happening every 3 years, they are fairly used to embracing that. So when you are looking at that wide a spectrum, with the Gen Zs also starting their work, most Gen Zs are into the job today, and you still have some boomers in the workforce. That's a pretty hard and challenge with what we have gone through in the last 35 years, as professionals. And so the crux here is the person. I agree with Glenn wholeheartedly. I think we as people really need to do our internal transformations here. Don't depend on corporations to transform you. I would say my first step is to transform yourself. Take control of your own destiny. Understand that it's going to be hard from here on. And if you're kind of going to be, Rip Van Winkle, and you're going to go to sleep, then when you wake up, you will see that you can't recognize the world. So don't be that person. Make sure that you take charge of your destiny and say, how does my job change 1, 2, and 5 years from today? Keep asking that question. I would highly advocate that spend time and build personal learning plans for yourself with what you want to be or where you want to be. As Alice in Wonderland said, if you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter where you start. But don't be that person. Have a goal, have a way to look at the future. This all needs some quiet time with yourself, and start to plan what tomorrow may look like, especially if you're in mobility, because that's changing so fast. You won't know when it hit you.
For us, particularly, the leadership itself starts with mapping your workforce completely from a generational paradigm. You look at what's the constitution of your workforce, and then create learning programs, right? Tailor-made for each generation. For example, Gen Zs learn differently than the boomers, than the millennials. So from that perspective, communication from the management to the employees at these different segments, in the way they understand that the jobs are evolving, whether we like it or not, whether the business likes it or not. And this is what is there in the future, the way the business sees it, right? And that communication on a continual basis has yielded some success for us. Meaning, a lot of times people are like, there's opposition to, why would we use this software? Or we were using this 6 months back. Why should we do this now? We just re-implemented something. Oh, the workflow changed now. So from that perspective, why are we doing what we're doing? Communicating that to these different strata of the workforce has yielded results for us. From a personal perspective, everybody pretty much understanding that this is how it's going to be will be helpful for everyone.
Thank you, Rophin. I think as organization, I think it's important to make the team members realize that change is permanent. I think it's critical to have the team members understand that everybody can learn from each other as well. When you look into a team, for example, in GM, we have veterans who have been there for decades, and we have people, 50% of the people who are less than 5 years in our dynamic. So we have a full spectrum, and it's important for the oak trees of the world, the folks who have spent the time, learn from their experience, and vice versa. The veterans can learn some of the technological and their agility from the younger core. So I think it's important, as Rophin says, to understand the dynamic of the team, and then providing them the necessary resources, individualize, understanding their needs and providing the resources so that they can all, be vested in this, not have a one-size-fits-all approach. I think that's going to be a key.
I mean, it's pretty clear when you look at an employee that you've hired this person, you've invested in this person. It's your most important asset. So reinvesting in them and helping them to reskill or change makes business sense as well as human sense. So before we go to questions, we're gonna come back to each of you from a personal standpoint. But and Hush and I work together on a project right now. We're working with the Square One robotics teams across the state. We have a theory that we're putting forth that we can build a farm system, a baseball or a soccer academy type of approach with these robotics teams that we're proving out right now. I think it's going to work. I'm excited about it. But one of the things we talk about all the time are, unfortunately, in this area and across Michigan, this is a wonderful state. I mean, it's an incredible state. It has incredible schools. I just looked at the SAT scores from all the different schools and where they're ranked. And I grew up on Lake Superior, way up in the north, and I get around the state quite a bit. But unfortunately, there's one thing that bothers me a lot, and Kush knows this. It's the ratio of counselors to students in our schools. And I would be remiss if I didn't have a panel and didn't talk about the talent that's coming that is going to be transforming and reskilling. But Hush knows the answer to this. I'm going to put it out to you. So from 1 to 50, what do you think Michigan ranks in the ratio of students to counselors? Anybody? What, New Hampshire's the best, I'll tell you that. But where do you think Michigan is from 1 to 50 in the ratio of the number of students to a counselor in a high school? 48th. Yeah, 48th. Yeah, we were 49th, so we moved up one. So I guess that's progress. But and this is something we're actually working with on in the legislature, because that's not acceptable. The national average is 450 to 1, which is not acceptable, by the way. The recommendation is 250 to 1. We're at 650 to 1 in Michigan, even in our best schools. So our kids are not getting pathway planning and training. They're just not. And these poor counselors have so many things on their plate, they don't get to that. So we're going to be getting a lot of people coming our way that are struggling to find their pathways, and we wonder why we have, high workforce development problems. This is one of them. We have a mismatch. But your thoughts, and Hush, I'll start with you because you work with the kids in the schools. It's also a mindset for them, because they're going to have to change. Like Bill said, you're going to work for more than 5 places. It's probably going to be 10 or 15, maybe even more if you're part of Free Agent Nation. So your thoughts on those people coming up having a mindset too. I'll ask each of you that.
Yeah, I think definitely being a dad to 2 teenagers. Well, my daughter is 21, so doesn't qualify to be a teenager anymore. But both of them part of the Michigan school system. I agree with Glenn. A great state. I've lived in 3 other states. I've lived here the longest, and that's what we call home. But I did ask my kids after I heard the statistic from Glenn a few months ago about how they feel about the lack of counselors, and how some of that direction that could have been given to them in the school, reinforced at home, could have been a nice little parlay between home and school. That's clearly missing. And I think what we need to encourage youngsters to see and do, and this is one of the things I look for in when I hire, and Glenn knows this. I love to hire kids who've gone through robotics at high school, and if they can, continue it through college. Most of our robotics institutes, Square One being a great exponent of that, has a very well-rounded way of giving our kids the exposure to various different disciplines of what corporate life could look like 4 or 5 years after they get out of high school. And with the lack of counselors and with the lack of exposure that otherwise the kids get, that's one personal experience as a parent to another parent here I could give, is that's been life-changing for both my kids, because it's very well-rounded. If you've not experienced it yourself, I would highly recommend it. But as a employer now, as a professional and a chief executive, I'm always looking to see that now with this handicap that we have in Michigan, kids that I'm hiring, what kind of extracurricular programs they have taken, what is their learning ability, how is their learning ability basically been developed. Because we know that, as Rophin very clearly said, and even Ravi said it, change is the only constant. So the only way I can see that on a young kid is to see whether they've tried to be agile with their learning abilities. 20 years ago, we would kind of frown on that the person doesn't know what they are doing in life. This person switches careers. We kind of frowned upon that as professionals, even when I look back at my career. Today, that's not what you want to do. Today, you want to encourage that agility as a professional employer, and you want to look for people who have that ability right from a young age to keep trying new things and adapting their brains to kind of find new ways to learn. That's my little experience.
I'll tell you what we're trying to do. We're trying to work with the local governments, the cities, the cities around from where we believe we can influence these kids right when they start high school. And we're not doing big programs or something. What we're doing is we're telling them, hey, we open ourselves one day. You can come tour our place, look at the stuff. At least if you can excite 10% of those kids to pick up this particular industry, I think it'll make the needle move in the right direction. One of the reasons we started doing that is we see a big dearth of technical talent, not from even engineering or grad level studies. I'm talking about technical trades who actually will make excellent remuneration. Companies are willing to even sponsor their college tuition right now, but I don't believe a lot of folks know it right now. So we are doing this right now from a city perspective, working with the local city officials, mayors. So I believe that'll move the needle a little.
Yeah, no, that's a startling number, 48th in the country for counselors. I think we are the change agents. I mean, we have two kids, and we always talk about STEM initiatives. How we can give it back to the community by being a coach, by being a robotics coach or a science Olympiad coach. Trying to do things so that we can get the STEM initiative amongst the student community and getting them the problem-solving mentality that the engineers need, and instilling in them early is critical. And as Hush said, rather than waiting for the government or the community to step in, I think we need to be the change agents. We, as parents, we can step in and provide that opportunity and scope and environment for the kids, and I think that's very critical. And I think that can move needle for sure.
Thank you. All right, so before we open it up, I'm going to bring it back to you all real quick. We okay on time?
We have 5 minutes, so we can get to the question.
We'll do Q&A right now then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then if we have time, I'll ask you that last question.
So my name is Kusha, and I work with two EV OEMs right now. And one of the things which surprises me from the skills standpoint is they have great technical skills, but some of the soft skills and the solving skills they do not have. So I'm just trying to understand how can the industry and the college curriculum and the high school curriculum is more towards not just teaching the technical aspects, but how to work in team environment, how to do the problem solving. That's what I would like to understand more.
Yeah, I can probably take it. Yeah, no, excellent question, Kush. I think one of the things I was wanting to mention in this forum is the things that you take from one job to another is the soft skills. I think it's important to your team mentality, your ability to work with different team members cross-functionally, and being able to succeed in that environment is a big portion to being a leader. And those soft skills are needed whether you're in EVs or whether you're in manufacturing or whichever area you're in. The soft skills are critical for being successful. And I think that's one important aspect that is the incoming or the pivoting folks need to remember while they're looking at different career paths, and that will come handy for one to succeed on. With that,
Just to add a small point here. I think soft skills are being looked at as you pivot, as you try to come into an organization. Also, there are some organizations that are actually identifying, because I think many of the technical skills, people, especially with higher aptitude, a lot of times I see that, soft skills are either not there or not cultivated, or, just the way things are post-COVID. So from that perspective, we've started internally to start, building this soft skill as an initiative, which is part of their learning management for each individual. So again, moving the needle little by little. So, but this is a key pivot area.
The only thing I'll add, Kush, is that it's never too late to learn anything. Quite frankly, I mean, science says that there is something called as neuroplasticity in our brain, which allows our brain to learn all the time. But if it is anything easiest to learn, it's soft skills. Anything, right? So there is no excuse for us professionals to not to learn at least soft skills as the things around us are changing. You just got to ask the question, what do I need to learn today? Is it more collaboration? What is it that I need to develop as a soft skill more than what I did yesterday? Again, it's about that curiosity from within that has to be there, and soft skills are easy to learn. Easier.
Yeah, my next question is around, if you look at the bigger skilling, across the universe, attract, train, and retain, has been kind of, whether it's a university or corporation, training was kind of left out in the outsourcing world. And now there is another one called retrain, So it looks like the AI platforms today are capable of doing something, the machine can learn and repeat. So how do you see skilling for, from high school onwards you talked about, to college and the corporate, what's a good revolutionary thing that's going to happen, that's going to catapult, some of the younger generation to move towards that path?
So I'll try to answer that first, Sundar. In being part of a tech company, what we are telling all of our engineers is that you may not lose your job to AI, but you'll definitely lose your job if you do not know how to use AI in your work, right? That's the kind of mantra that we are beating the drum on in our company, because for us, in technology, in software, AI can do a lot. I think a lot of you are engineers here, and you know the drill here. It'll generate code. QA will almost be wiped out. It can do a lot of its own QA. It can look for bugs. There's self-healing code. So in the business of software, that entire industry has to reimagine itself. How is software going to be written, right? So pre-code and stuff is all going to be self-generated. So we encourage every engineer to understand the impact of AI on their current work. Once again, what the panel said 15 minutes ago, develop a self-learning plan. How will you incorporate? So please embrace the change. Don't fight it and say AI is kind of bad for society, because as you know what's happening, billions of dollars are going into AI, which means it is going to be pervasive, right? When you see capital going into an area the way it's going in today, and the only reason the stock market is up 40% this year with a recession around the corner is only because of two alphabets, A and I, right? You can tell that this is going to be here to really transform our lives. So we are forcing our engineers to kind of make work plans around AI in their lives, and have them well documented and follow up on that as leaders to say what has happened, how have you made progress towards it, et cetera, et cetera.
Just one point to add. AI is, it's a double-edged sword. At the end of the day, we can either be on the sideline watching how it progresses, or we can be part of the journey and transform it with the human touch that we have, which AI does not. So I think jumping on board and tapping into it to take advantage, I think, is a big key. And I'm sure that will provide benefits in the longer term.
I'll make a quick statement here. I think reskilling, retraining, you're just changing your tool sets. That's something that people need to identify, that your tools that you use today, the softwares, this will be new. So go with that mindset that you continually will be adapting new tool sets, whether it's called AI or whether it's called something else.
Great discussion, really great discussion, and lot of A and I retraining. Unfortunately, we have to end. I will hand it over to Ram.
So once again, thank you all. Please give them a big hand. Thank you, Glenn, for moderating and being here with us. I'm going to call on Nirdosh Reddy, who is one of our previous chairpersons of ASEI. He's a longtime member, probably one of the early founding members of ASEI in Michigan, and he is graciously accepted to be here and listen to what's going on now, 40 years later. So I'm going to call on him to give the plaques.
Good to see you all. I was here 35 years ago, 30 years ago. It's great to see all the young people coming here, and it's exciting to see what's happening here. Great job, all of you. Wonderful message you all shared. Organization culture being so important. Very nice. Thank you. Thank you.